All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another discussion of To Your Eternity. And we are discussing volumes 9 and 10 today. And I am, of course, joined by my partner in crime, my manga guru, Merphy Napier. Hey, Murph, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Philip?
I'm doing really well. It is lovely to see you as always.
You
And
as well.
I am very curious to see how you found volumes 9 and 10, if these were any more
About the
enticing.
same.
Same?
Nah.
Okay. Okay.
For the majority of it, it was about the same. Whereas, just I don't know. I'm enjoying it. It's not negative. I'm
Uh-huh.
just not excited about
Uh-huh.
it. However, the end of 10 has me pretty heavily intrigued. So
Yes, I was intrigued.
hopefully the next set will be the ones where I say, aha, it's got me again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I will say for
How about
myself,
you?
yeah, there were moments in both of these where I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then there were moments where I was like, what? So I keep having both of those things where,
Yeah.
and a
There's
lot of, yeah, go ahead.
there's a lot more intrigue with the
Yeah.
cloaked man and
Yes, we
what
got to
his
talk about
motivations are. Yeah, we need to dig into that because there's a lot that I feel like I'm just almost in a wait and see pattern
that.
where, they drop these little clues and I feel like I can't quite connect what's happening just yet. So I'm just kind of trying to hold all the pieces in my hands so that I
Yeah.
could start
Yeah.
piecing them together eventually.
Yeah, that is, I do feel similarly myself. A lot of my kind of like what moments are these very abrupt changes in a character. Like a
Mm,
character will just sort of suddenly flip out. And I'm like, wait, what?
mm.
Why did that person just do that?
That's
Um,
manga, man. You just gotta roll
okay.
with that.
That I'm just telling myself exactly that. Okay,
Yeah.
this is how it goes in manga. Suddenly a character just flips out and the eyes get big and they start exclaiming, and that's what manga does. So just roll with it, man. Uh,
Roll with it.
yeah. So that's what I'm doing. And once I get over those, there are some cool things in here. So let's get into it a little bit. And beginning with, I thought it was an interesting development to have Fushi saving first Prince Bon, from the prison,
In the
and
prison, yep.
then having Bon actually, who has really, as we remarked last time, he's undergone an important uh, shift in his character.
Yeah.
He's become much less self-centered as a
Yes.
result of being this experience being in the cage. And he says, "I'll stay." Yeah. So, what did you think of that whole business of him uh, essentially convincing Fushi at first, "Hey, I'll stay, and don't worry, I'll be fine." And he, at that moment, we realized later, was going to sacrifice himself. And then Fushi comes back
Hmm.
to save him, puts everybody to sleep, and then puts
Hmm.
a false, a dummy body that they with
Yeah,
a
he like guards over him with the sleep
yeah,
thing. He like
yeah,
appears over him to do that. I thought that was really cool.
yeah,
Um and excuse me. I really liked it too because I think it was pretty clear that Bon was not telling Fushi the full truth and that he had other intentions and this was just his moment to finally do something for other people instead of constantly expecting others to do for him.
yeah,
And when we switched, and he was like, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm dead, but this is all my wishes and this." And I liked that Fushi kind of like instead of just explaining it to him, he was like, "Well, let's logic that out. That doesn't really make sense, does it? Because you're not king right now." It's just like, such a funny response, but I believed it. I thought he was dead when we first made that shift.
yeah. And then we later get the
Yep,
explanation
right.
he gives in Tonari form. He's
Beautiful, beautiful picture image.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought that was cool.
Hmm.
So that was satisfying. I'm liking this character Bon. I think even more now, and he's complex, and he knows stuff about Fushi that he's holding back, and he
Mm.
sees he has this ability to, as we find out here or in 10, we see hints of it in 9, that he can see the beholder. That
Hmm.
not only can he
Which
see,
is
Yeah.
Interesting too, because do you recall when he first saw the beholder and he was talking in the wrong direction? So
Yeah.
he was even tricking the beholder because Fushi was like, he's not over there, he's over here. So
Yeah.
he saw the beholder in that scene and he just chose to pretend like he couldn't.
Yeah. We
Isn't that
keep
interesting?
Bond keeps being much more crafty than you
Mm,
might realize, because he comes across as very, in the beginning, of course, as very extravagant,
eccentric. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, very eccentric. But he has these cards up his sleeve, like you said. He pretended there, and later and this is in volume 10, but he drugs Fushi, fools Fushi, and at first I wonder, oh no, is he doing something bad? Then it turns out no,
Mm,
I think, consistently trying to figure things out and do the right thing. I believe, like, he's become a truly, I've never felt like he was doing something really sinister, but that
hmm
he's still holding stuff back. Like, he has not told Fushi,
hmm
you have the ability to revive a person that has died. If you've taken their
Yeah.
form, you can. Apparently, what it takes is he has to uh, detach that body from himself, and that body then becomes available for the spirit of the person that he knew. And that's confirmed at
Right.
10, because suddenly we see, oh my God, March opens her eyes. Like, holy
She's
cow.
back.
Like, oh, March is back. Yeah, right. So that
Right.
that's a whole aspect of Fushi that Bond knows, because of
Yeah.
the princess that he already revived, and he's not telling him. Why isn't he telling him that?
Is it still tied to that question that he asked when he said, if you find out how to bring your friends back, or if your friends did come back, would you leave me for them? And he said yes. And so Bond chose not to tell him. I wonder if it's still tied to that.
So he still has a selfish motive in there.
I think it would be silly narratively to just remove all his selfishness from him in one fell swoop.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I also am intrigued by his relationship with Iris. Now we know her name is Iris, and
Yes.
she
Yes, that's
previously
Toto's
Toto.
correct
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
Yeah, yep, yep. Yeah, it's really reminiscent of Vinland Saga, eh?
With
The baby and Gertrude or whatever.
yes, yes, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I know what you're saying. Yes, yes. Yeah, intriguing, because
It's like
you
it's like a family that kind of feels right as the reader. Like we know that they're a family, but they don't yet know, but they're
right,
acting as a family just to care for this child.
right, because Chabo is the child, the bald little boy that was in the
Right, the
cage.
one that was in the cage with them,
Yeah, yeah,
who
yeah.
lost his mother, and
Yes.
then he went through this, and then he was an orphan, and they took him in, and now they're caring for him, they're helping him, they're integrating him into this kind of makeshift family. It's really sweet. And then we have Iris, who is staying behind and caring like as the mother while he goes off to fight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he always says, I'm going to come home to you.
Yes. Yes. I mean, so I feel like Bond is in love with Iris on some level.
Oh, I
And
think so. Well, I mean, I think Iris absolutely is in love
oh,
with
that's
Bond.
no
That's been made
question.
clear.
No
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
So as far as Bond, it might be a slower build. Like he might not be yet, but I think it's clear narratively that that's where we're going. Like the family is formed, and then it'll just kind of make sense eventually that it's like, oh, we're already a family, and this is
Ah,
just this feels right.
let's hope so. I mean,
Gertrude's the wrong name. What was her name from Vinland Saga?
you're talking about, okay, so Thorfinn and oh, why am I blanking?
You know
Um
what? It's okay. We don't need to say Vinland Saga
I
spoilers
know I'm
anymore.
picturing her from
It's
the
okay.
but she's a
People
very,
that have read it know who we're talking
I
about.
will remember it at some point in this conversation and scream out the name. So when that happens.
Good.
So, but anyway, yeah, this bit with them, and you have the handkerchiefs thing that she's made in the previous one, and he really wanted that back. The one that had fallen
Mhm.
in the muck, in the sewage and stuff, and she
Mhm.
had gone there to retrieve it. And
Mhm.
we thought before, I thought before, oh, she's just doing back then it was Toto. And we thought, oh, he's just doing that too because he's very, very loyal and subservient to Bond. And so I thought, okay, well, that's, but now I think that it has its sort of added an added poignancy because we realized that she had given him that earlier. What I'm not quite getting is, do they have a history? They have some kind of history that I don't quite
Okay,
understand.
yes.
Can you, is there somebody at your door? Do you need to answer the door?
I'm not sure what's happening.
Oh,
So the yes, so I didn't put it all together until I was reading these two volumes
okay.
where so at the beginning of our last section, our last two that we read, we
Yeah.
saw Iris and him as a child. Remember when he fell in love with the peasant girl?
Yeah.
Or liked the peasant girl, and then he like they took him and they like tried to get the demon out of him or whatever because like you can't love
Right.
a peasant girl, and then they sent her away. Do you
Right.
remember that when they were
That was
children?
Iris.
That was Iris.
Okay.
And I believe Iris gave him the handkerchief when they were kids, and he just hung on to it all that time. And
Uh-huh.
so, do you remember when Toto retrieved the handkerchief and then or Iris as Toto retrieved the handkerchief and it meant a lot to her? And she
Yes.
was just like, oh, this is like, it was significant to her at that time, but we didn't know why. I think we were supposed to have already put it together that, oh, that's the handkerchief from a few chapters ago. And
Okay.
then realize that this is the same person before the reveal actually came. We were just dummies
Oh.
that didn't realize it until it was spelled out for us.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I know. So so the handkerchief was originally Iris's that she
Hmm.
gave to him, and that was their anchor point. And then when she realized that he had been hanging on to it, she made him a new one. And then that was also the point where he realized, oh, this has been you this whole time.
Okay. So that's where I mean, he kind of realizes it in this scene, I think, right? Oh, you really are good. And she's stuttering out, thank you. And then he's laughing. He just walks off laughing, maybe because he realizes at that moment.
I believe so. That's the way I took that scene. Yes.
Okay. Because that's one of those manga character moments where I'm like scratching my head. Like, why
Like,
why does
what's
he
going
react
on right now?
that way?
Yeah. When I read that scene, I was like, ah, I'm so dumb. I should have put this together so long ago. And it's just like, but yeah, I think that was the sequence of things
Okay.
that we didn't pick up on.
Yeah, and he says it here. We met when we were younger, didn't we? And she says yes. So that's what you're referring to.
Right.
Okay. All right. So in any case, I feel like she clearly loves him, and he hasn't quite admitted yet, but has very deep feelings for her.
I think
Which is
I think this is the moment.
this reaction just puzzled me to no end. Where he do you know what I'm talking about right here,
No,
right?
no, no. Read the panel to me.
Yeah, so she's saying, "Oh, I was so happy that you found me. So, yes, I was Toto and I ate all that food as a way to disguise myself and blah blah." And then he just blows up out of nowhere saying, "Stop making things up. She was neat and graceful and lovely. She would never scale a wall or get as fat as a pig or act as a human chair or dive into a filthy pile of dung." That was like, okay.
I know it wasn't cute. So yeah. So I think that was him kind of processing all this new information that
Okay.
this young child that he cared about is this girl that's in front of him now, but also this companion that he had that he mistreated
Right.
was
Um,
also her. And so it's just like that's a lot of information that he's taken in all at once. And this is him kind of rejecting it all and just being like, this is a lie. I don't accept it. No, this girl that I've hung on to the memory of, I didn't treat her as a chair. I didn't do this. She wouldn't have done that. None of that's true.
okay.
Like it's like this very, it's not cute, it's not good, but it's just a very human reaction.
Okay. All right. So in that case, when he comes back, he has accepted, I think, when she starts to fill herself with cupcakes and stuff. as a reaction to his anger there, as that she's obviously stunned by his anger, I guess. And she thinks, oh, I have to please him. I have to be Toto again. So she starts cramming herself
I take it more of as a comfort. Like,
okay.
she, I think she obviously loves him, and so that admission should have probably gone better, but she
Well,
just
okay.
instead she got completely rejected. And so she's
Right.
going back to a comfort to
Yeah.
kind of alleviate the feelings that she's feeling.
Right. And she says they're still pretending that he's not Bond, that he's Prince Springroll or whatever. And
Spring
she
roll is
says,
so cute.
apparently that man gets in a sour mood when I'm thin. So she's trying to, that's how she's rationalizing it, I guess. And but then he comes and grabs her and says, stop that. Don't forget the brave warrior Toto is dead. And then there's this, he's looking down at her, she's with the full cheeks and everything. It's kind of a funny scene. And then he's holding her hand there and there are fireworks going off. It's like very romantic suddenly, you
Yeah,
know?
it's very foreshadowy of
Okay.
this is kind of the beginning of them being able to create a connection now in this life, in this way,
Yeah.
in these forms, because they both changed a lot since Iris was pretending to be Toto and he was Prince Buttersmith. Who's a call it?
Yeah, all his Prince Bonchien de la Torre, whatever. I can't remember it all.
Right, real long name.
I also do like how Chabo, the little boy, keeps functioning as Bond's conscience in a way. Like he says, "Well, that
Mm.
wasn't well done," or "You're not gonna leave me alone now, are you?" And he kind of gives him this meaningful look, and then
Yeah, he's
right,
a straight man.
and they come together as a little family here. I like that. Yeah.
It's very sweet.
Okay.
There's
Well.
a little bit of me, especially once we get back
Oh,
to
yeah.
the man with the knocker in his arm.
That's where we're going next. Yeah, because that's kind of the
Him,
next big scene. Yeah.
those two
Kahako.
characters together,
Yeah.
they look too similar. And so I
I
keep like
know.
having to look at them
I had
twice
the
when they're together.
same problem. I had the same problem.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, which one are you? Are you Kahaku or are you one of the three dudes that Bond has brought here?
Yeah. And Kahaku, his hair is more like down and floppy, and Bond's hair is a little bit more fixed, but that's not good enough. They look too
Yeah,
similar.
yeah. To me, they're all the same hairdo. But yeah. So, but yeah, Kahaku was the next thing I wanted to talk about actually, because Fushi feels pain. This is an interesting development that they seem to be emphasizing more and more in these,
Mhm,
is that he can feel people's pain. And the
mhm.
more expanded he is in terms of we see him really expanding in these two volumes and
Yeah.
quite deliberately as a tactic
Yeah.
of dealing with the
Fracturing in
knockers.
some ways.
Yeah, like it's very interesting. I want to get to that, but a key scene here is when he feels the pain. He's in Rian's form, and that little black kind of thing means pain in here, or suffering. And they find Kahaku had tried to stab the knocker out of himself, right?
Mm.
And there's that whole scene where they start talking to it, and it can write. It says, "Don't kill me," and
Oh, that scene was
it
crazy.
was crazy. It was like one of the weirdest, most interesting developments, I think, in these two volumes.
Yeah, how did you take that?
Well, this is what I want to ask you, because it's not only does it says "Don't kill me," but we are trying to save you from the beholder. We're trying to save everyone because people's spirits are being imprisoned in their bodies, and we want to end the suffering. That's the mission of the knockers, right?
Okay. Right. So how do you take that?
Okay, well, I always thought that the beholder is extremely suspicious, and then his withholding information is not something that makes me trust him. And later in volume 10, we learn more, even because he is kind of being exposed by Bond in a way, because Bond can see him. He seems to have some guesses as to what's going on here. Later, he even says, "You're not just trying to train Fushi, you're trying to make him your replacement. You're trying to get out of here." So, which makes me, that was another mind-blowing moment too. But as far as this goes, the idea that death will set us free, right? And this goes back to some legends and stuff like that. And Fushi's trying to grapple with this, right? And he's saying, wait, that's murder. You're killing people. And they're insisting, no, you're wrong. We wish to save you all from your heavy, painful, suffocating flesh. Right? So I don't know, Merphy, if I were to pose this to you, if I could
I
guarantee
would think you were a serial killer. I'm trying to save you by removing your spirit from your body. This is a relief. Just let me stick this dagger between your ribs.
right, right. Or find other horrible ways to turn you into a zombie or whatever. Yeah.
Right. I
But
guess that's true. That's so much worse. Oh my gosh. I didn't even think about that. It's not
yeah.
even just death. It's allow me to control your body so that I can destroy more people.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting. And well, I mean, this okay, from the perspective of the knockers, okay, they're not wrong about suffering. We do a lot of that, and we
Mm-hmm.
inflict a lot of that. And
Mm-hmm.
if you could know for sure that the end of this flesh home, this body, would mean that your spirit would be free and that you could live in some kind of, I don't know, happier state with less pain, with less suffering. If you could know that, and you have this entity saying to you, yeah, we'll end it for you, all this
And then
bad
we'll
stuff.
zombify you.
Well, I mean, you won't care anymore because it's not you're not enclosed in that prison any longer as they're seeing it. And so yeah, it sounds freaky to us because we're rather attached to our bodies, right?
I like my flesh sack.
I do too. I do too. But there's a whole side to this now where I don't know if am I still meant to be seeing these knockers as sinister because they're in opposition to the beholder who is acting very suspiciously.
He is.
Yeah, what do you make of
My
all?
observation is that their goal, we
Mhm.
want to release you of the position you currently hold,
Right.
is similar to the goal of the beholder. I want to be released of the position that I currently hold.
Uh-huh.
So why do the knockers why do they care? Why do you care? Why do you care about my suffering? What's it to you?
Right.
Right? So is your intention good? Are you trying to release me so you can use me? But then how do you use me? You just use me so that you can release more people of their flesh sacks. So, but then we also have this concept of phi, where when you die, your spirit moves on. Does
Yeah.
it move on? Like, for instance, with Bjorn, she could have moved on to some other ether, some other realm or something, but she chose to
Right.
reincarnate.
So her phi is then essentially until
A
it
horse.
yeah, yeah. I mean, essentially it's being held in a stasis of a sort. Whereas the knockers seem to be free spirits that are trying to free other spirits, aka you and me, right? And we have a phi inside us. And if only we could be, free of this pain-filled.
And some people choose for their phi to go into the next generation so their will can carry
Yeah,
on until it is completed, right? That's what we got with Hayase.
right.
Hayase. So the question is, are these spirits trying to free our spirits so we can have the choice to reincarnate or to move on? Or do they have some greater idea? Is the beholder trapped? And if so, can the knockers help him be released? Apparently, he can't be released until he's replaced.
Yeah.
And what is Fushi's goal? His goal is to collect all the information. And once he has collected all the information, then supposedly he can be freed,
Mm,
which to the beholder actually means become me. But he's chained, he's imprisoned in this position,
right.
supposedly, and trying to get free. But he also isn't all-knowing. So why does Fushi need to collect all the information to become the new beholder when the beholder doesn't know? He doesn't have all the information. And in fact, he's learning through Fushi. So I have many questions.
Yeah.
You thought I was coming to a conclusion. Oh no.
Well, tiny bit more information we have in this conversation between the beholder and Fushi a little bit later. And basically, he asks straight up, is the knocker right? And beholder says, it is correct, but it is not up to me to decide whether it is right. If everyone had died according to the knocker's scheme, what would happen? That's Fushi. What would happen if they actually did follow through? They got to free everyone, free all these souls. Who knows? They probably would be glad. Glad, that's all? And then the beholder answers, they have no bodies. That would likely be all. And that's it. So yeah, and the beholder is not. Yeah, what's your question?
No, go ahead.
No, I just think that beholder is not being honest at all with Fushi.
No, he's not being forthright.
He is much more connected to the knockers than he is acknowledging as well, because he can not only detect them, but it feels like he can control them even to some degree. But
interesting. I haven't picked up on him being able to control them.
That's something that comes up in volume 10. When
I must have missed it.
Confrontation. Yeah, we'll take a look at that scene when Bon arranges this confrontation, puts Fushi to sleep, calls in his 3 buddies, and then says, okay, beholder, you can show yourself to us, can't you?
Right.
And he's right. And during that conversation, I think Bon implies or seems to suspect strongly that the beholder is much more connected to the knockers than he has acknowledged.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's interesting. Well, that does make sense because Fushi, I mean, the beholder is determined to get Fushi to continue to fight the knockers to get stronger. And we now know the purpose of that is so that the beholder can be free from his position. Yeah. So he is essentially working with the knockers in order to strengthen Fushi for his own desires, right?
Seems like that's what he's kind of the puppeteer up there making all this.
So the knockers are doing this. They're confronting Fushi so that he can get stronger. They're taking on his forms. They're doing all that they're supposed to do, but also their goal is to free all the humans from their mortal bodies. But at the same time, the beholder doesn't want Fushi to be bothered with humans because he deems them to be unworthy of Fushi's time and attention. But the knockers deem humans to be very worthy of their time and attention.
Yeah.
So what? I don't know. I'm holding a lot of puzzle pieces.
Okay, well, a couple easier things to grasp, or I think just some minor, like, let's get through these plot points here. I don't think we have to say much, but there is the attack on the Temple of Bennett, where Fushi tries to save people, loses 5, I think, of his forms, including Perona, which is bad news for...
Bad news bears.
Bad news for Kahaku because he's in love.
Not really, though, because Kahaku is then able to confront that his feelings for Fushi are truly for Fushi and not just for Perona.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. So, yeah. And then there seems to be some game going on where, you know, if you want them back, meet us here. And then there's that whole swamp scene where Fushi goes off to the swamp to confront the knocker there, and it's a different knocker. It's not the one that has his forms, as it turns out. And that's where we meet the horse, which is called Horse.
And do you have any thoughts on the horse?
Well, you seem to think that well, the beholder says, I made the horse out of you, but is the horse actually pure? And you think and that makes sense to me. I could
be wrong, but she requested to be reincarnated as a tool for Fushi, something to help Fushi.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great call.
What the horse is presented as.
Yeah, I like it. I did not make that connection, but I think you're probably right, and I like it. So yeah,
a couple of us on the Discord kind of came to that conclusion, so it feels right because a couple other people came to the conclusion too.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's compelling. I like it. Yeah, so he gets help from the horse, we'll call it Horse. Interestingly, he does take Puron's form during this whole encounter,
which is cool too, because
right when the horse comes, what do you know? Huh?
Yeah, It's cool too because the beholder explained to us that when Bjorn would reincarnate, she would be a new being. Her old memories, her old self, her old personality, that
Yeah.
doesn't transfer over. So he can still take on the form of Bjorn, even though Bjorn's spirit or Phi is in something else.
Interesting.
Because Bjorn, as we knew her, is no more.
Right. And it's a very tough horse, by the way, because it falls off a cliff and gets
Oh my
back.
goodness.
Yeah. So it's no ordinary horse. I like the idea that it's Bjorn because guess what else it does? It bites Fushi. Remember how many times she bit Fushi? So
Absolutely, she did. Maybe for different intentions.
yeah,
It might have been more like, "You're immortal. Give me that leg."
yeah. No, I think that's a great call, Murph. I'm gonna go with you on that one. So yeah, I don't think we need to dwell on that too much though. And then I think the last important part of this particular volume is the whole business of them telling Fushi, you need to be able to expand now. You need to be able to, you got to go, we'll buy you some time. You go learn to make a ship, right?
He does it a little differently than we expected, though.
Just slightly differently. Yes.
Have you noticed that when he turns into like the core, the hub of like this thing that branches out, he ends up looking a lot like a knocker?
I did notice that, and I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, okay.
So what do you think
Ask
that is? What do you think that
What
is?
do I think that is? I think that's a little bit telling of what Fushi is made of. And along with your theory, which I didn't catch, that there's a deeper connection between the beholder and the knockers. The
Yeah.
beholder made Fushi, and Fushi's looking a whole lot like a knocker the more he extends himself. So
Yep.
the beholder might be the creator of the knockers as well. Yeah, he's looking rather knockery.
Yeah. Very knockery indeed. So yeah, I have questions. I don't have a ton of answers. But yeah, he needs to work on his ship design a wee bit there. But yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't look quite right.
but he's certainly expanded, and it's very organic. The knockers have always been very organic, and that's an interesting aspect of this. And you're right.
Yeah, they seem very of the earth.
And of course, the other development here is that Fushi rescues Itty, as he later names her,
Of
and
the earthen people tribe? Is that what it
yeah,
was
like the
called?
earthen pot people or whatever they're called. Yeah, because
The earthen pot people.
she communicates with the pot, right?
He does, which is really cool.
Yeah,
I
that's
kind of
different.
thought they'd do more with that when they were like, big revelation. Oh, she's a part of this really rare group of people. And then they're like, anyway. It's like, what do you want to dig into that, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. And then Fushi bathes her in
Mhm.
the form of Rian, and she comes out, yay, all sparkly, but still the
Then
only
her hands get dirty again because she has to keep touching that pot to communicate. And I
yeah,
like that Fushi can't, he buries the boy and then he can't communicate with her unless he becomes the boy.
he's the boy because he has the boy's
Yeah, isn't that
ability,
interesting?
yeah, in that form. So that's a neat relationship. And then
It is
she
neat. And it's also interesting to me that Fushi has this relationship with those that he carries the Phi of,
yes,
in that, or I don't, it might be something different though than Phi, because with Phi, when you reincarnate, when you put your spirit into another being, you lose your previous self. It's
yeah,
just the will that carries onward. But
yeah.
Fushi retains memories, communication methods, and dreams and desires. So he seems to carry more than just the Phi,
Hmm. Interesting.
which is maybe why he's able to resurrect, because he's carrying more than just Phi.
Yeah. There has to be something like that in order for this all to make sense. So I think you're onto something there.
You know what's fun?
What?
This is an incomplete series. We're probably not going to get answers when
Oh
we finish up the
no,
people.
that's terrible. Don't say that. Oh dear. Well, we can maybe try to answer this one. Whose dream are we seeing on the cover?
The earthen pot girl,
Okay. Is that
Izzy,
Itty? Yeah.
Itty.
Is
Am I
that it?
wrong?
I don't know. I think that's Itty though. Like she's way
Mm.
more
Well, then
blonde.
who's that?
I was thinking it might be Pocoa, the sister of
Oh,
Bon.
the sister.
Yeah,
Oh, I thought she was a brunette or like black
I did
hair.
too. I did not picture her hair being lavender colored.
We
But
haven't even talked about her, and she's the cover.
I guess. I mean, I think that's her. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong.
Fits the personality, that very like crazy personality.
Yeah, yeah. And we see her consistently talking with a lisp at times. But when
Mm.
she gives a speech once in this volume, she does not speak with a lisp. I noticed that when she was giving a
Mm.
speech, she loses the lisp for some reason. But anyway, I was puzzled by that, and I thought maybe you'd have a theory. But
Nope.
I thought it must be Pocoa. Um,
You might be right. I don't read them physically, so I see the cover and then I move on and then I don't see the cover
and
again.
you can't see the color either, right? Because you're reading in the ebook, and that doesn't have it in color. Or does it have a color version?
I think it shows it in color.
Oh, okay, okay. But anyway, I think this is Itty.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And if that is Itty, then I'm not sure exactly what the dream is saying there, but she looks much more
Her
happy.
hands are clean, so it might be that she learns to communicate in our language.
Hmm. Oh, that's a thought. Huh. Yeah. I like that. Huh. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Okay. So this was interesting, and we start out with kind of knockery Fushi here in the heart of this network, and pretty cool stuff. Like he can suddenly appear at a table that he's conjured up, just appear out of the ground, and and then I'm not in this
And that's
body.
what you were talking about, how he like
Yeah.
he creates this other form and then detaches himself. And
Yes.
then now this is his form. He exists in this form.
Mhm.
That's wild. And
It's
this
all
volume
connected.
focuses heavily on Fushi overextending himself.
Yeah. 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 And he's trying to basically infuse himself into an entire city. That's in
Yeah.
order to save this main city of this place. I forget what it's called, but
But then also to help
Ren.
every citizen that has any sort of pain.
Yes, he keeps getting like he knows I can't keep running every time I feel someone's pain, but I can't stop. Right.
But then he can't stop himself because he feels the pain. So what are
Right.
you supposed to do? Just ignore it? But then we see him helping people with very small pains as well as very large pains.
Yeah. So it's an interesting notion. So if we're talking about the idea of connectivity and a kind of transcendence of self, and you have a character here who can do that, an immortal character who can feel other people's pain and even take their forms and et cetera, even perhaps enable their spirit to continue in some way or other. At a certain point, is he going to be stretched too thin? Is he going to be
Absolutely.
overextended? And we're seeing signs of that in this volume where he
Yeah.
wants to save the city, right?
Yeah.
So
He's always been a very giving person. He's always been someone who will give more of himself than what's fair. If someone's attacking him, then he won't probably attack back, or he'll just come back to life. It's no big deal and it hurts. Or I don't know, he's always given a lot, and here we're seeing that amped up so large, and we're seeing how you can't be a city. You can't fix every single need. You can't remove suffering, which the knockers want to do in their way, and he's trying to do in his way. And he
yes,
can't.
his suffering is part of the deal, isn't it?
That's part of it.
Yeah. And you can't just, yeah, interesting. I love this scene in a way where he leaves this home he's established with all his woodland creatures and stuff, and he says, see everyone, live long, and he's off to save the city with Bond and the others. So and they're campaigning and they're trying to save this place, and they've got this sort of secret thing, because Fushi is still regarded as somewhat of a heretic, of a heretical figure, right, by the Bennett Church. So they're doing things somewhat in secret, I guess. He's putting up a big old tarp every time he builds a house, and all of that. And there are these introduction of
Well,
these
for the
three.
people too. He doesn't want the people to realize what he can do as well.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And Bond brings along these three. So you've got Kai, and you've got Hyro, who I kept confusing with Kahaku. We got
Right,
a
another one.
yes, I know, right? I mean, doesn't he look like Kahaku? Same
Yes,
hair.
his hair's
And
slightly longer. That's it.
then you've got Messar.
Who's your favorite of the three?
Oh, come on.
Do it.
Probably Messar, I
Me
guess.
too.
He's the most intriguing. He's got that
Yeah.
prior relationship with the princess, and
Hmm.
he's a bit of a lovable rogue type, I think, is
Hmm.
what we're seeing
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
So we got everybody's backstories real quick, which I will say that bit I think was a bit clunky, where it
Yeah.
was just like, we need to do these backstories. So how can we make this happen? Okay, we do the one, and then we come back, and then Fushi very awkwardly is like, what about you? And then we do another, like it was just like, let's get through. And that's where it really started to lose me, because the idea that we built up at the end of volume 9 and the beginning of volume 10, I was like, okay, I'm in it. And then we started doing this, and I was just like, I don't know. And then we got out of all that finally, and then it got interesting again. So this part did it was a low point for me. But even with that being true, that one who has the prior relationship with the princess, he was very intriguing. I
Yeah.
liked following him a lot.
Yeah, he was the most interesting of the three. Hyro is really underdeveloped. All we know about him is that he was one of the knights or soldiers in the Bennett Church, and that he had this weird thing about not feeling pain, I guess. They yanked his teeth out and stuff, and he didn't feel anything or something. And I'm not quite sure where that's all going.
Yeah, it does harken back, and each of these are potentially going to be immortal, right? Like these are maybe our immortal army. And it harkens back to Fushi and how people would see, oh, you don't experience pain. Let me use you. Let me experiment on you. Let me treat you as an object, right? So
Right.
that is very similar. And admittedly, I kind of breezed through these backstories because I was not feeling it. But I do wonder if, since there's that strong parallel with Fushi, I wonder if each of them has a parallel with Fushi that kind of indicates that they have
Hmm.
maybe a little bit of immortality in them, Like, can you think of anything for the other
Well,
two?
the way that I was reading it was each of these three has in some way knows what Fushi is and is volunteered with the understanding that they're probably going to die, but that Fushi will be able to take their form and use their special abilities in his, quest or his mission to fight the knockers. So that's where
Yes,
I'm
and I read
thinking.
it that way too. I agree that that's what that is an understanding that we will eventually be nothing but flesh sacks for you to use, just like the knockers. Once again, Fushi is being aligned with the same kind of actions that the knockers, except that Fushi doesn't want to participate in those actions.
Right, right, right. Yeah, Fushi is still naive and is still innocent in all of this, and he has very pure motives. He wants to help, he wants to alleviate pain, but not by taking away their people's bodies. Right? He wants them to have a chance to live with less pain, I guess. But the knockers are like, no, sorry, pain is just everywhere. There are bodies, and the only way to get rid of it is to free the
Get rid of
spirit.
you.
Yeah. So
No, and I do find that interesting too, continuing to find parallels between the two, that Fushi's solution is I'll remove the suffering from you and thereby overextend myself to
yeah,
where I'm suffering now, versus the knockers who want to remove you from your life to remove the suffering from you. And
yeah,
both are wrong, eh? Like both are wrong. And I reckon what we'll probably come to is the conclusion that, as you put very well, suffering is part of life. Like that's part of what comes with it. And we aren't supposed to try to live without it or remove ourselves from it.
yeah, yeah. But poor Fushi is doing his best here. I mean, he's basically made of himself this organic network, and then he is becoming the city almost, right?
Yeah, he's attached to every piece of it.
Yeah, and so probably overextending himself in the
Big
process.
time.
So we're seeing that and his determination. He's building the wall, and the soldiers sort of figure out who he is, and they're being won over. I guess they have a sort of little PR campaign going at the same time, right? Like
Yeah.
Fushi's helped
And
all these
Itty
people.
say,
I was just saying he's helped all these people, right? And they realize, oh,
yeah.
he can't be what the Church of Bennett says if he's doing all this good, right?
Yeah. And Itty is doing a lot as well to serve the people. And I think that
Quietly.
that's an important parallel to show that a single mortal human is able to help as well, is able to use their unique giftings to serve one another.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's kind of where we're going, is the point that like we don't need this immortal being or this spirit being to do this. You know, our mortality is what we need and a big piece of how we can help each other, and we are enough to help each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. But in the meantime, he has made the entire tower, the palace, and everything else. That's Fushi now. That's not the old one. He's basically called that into being. And but then I really like more and more the character of Bon, who puts Fushi to sleep and calls this meeting and says, "Okay, beholder, I know you're there. You're there. I can see you. Show yourself, because I know you can do that." And he comes. And the other three are like stunned by this, right? And Bon explains, I want to take a close look at the scene, if that's okay, because I think it's interesting and maybe pointing to where things might be going. And he says, the pilot of the ship worth boarding is not Fushi, it's you. We have a right to know where it's headed, right? And he's not wrong. This whole thing, it might be that the beholder is not only manipulating Fushi, but he's manipulating the knockers. That's why he can keep telling Fushi, oh, knockers 30 miles away, go help. He's doing this all on purpose. So Bond says, couldn't you stop this whole battle under your own power? I've never attempted it, but it's likely possible, right? Then why don't you? I simply observe. I watch as Fushi acquires all the things I do. And then Hyro, I guess is his name, asks about, well, all these people are dying, right? And the beholder answers with, these deaths will become the seeds of his growth. Fushi will one day replace me. When that time comes, I shall vanish. And this guy, Messer, who I love, we both like, answers with, is that why you made him? Because you're going to disappear? Or is it because you want to disappear? Is it because you want to disappear? So I can imagine the beholder had been at some previous point much like Fushi, much more innocent, and that he has become this after millennia and millennia of interacting with life, maybe. And he's just like, enough, I want to be free. I want to be rid of this.
Interesting.
What do you think?
I have no idea. I don't know what to do with this scene. This is one of those things where I'm just kind of like, okay, collecting data points, and we'll just get there when we get there, because I don't have any theories on this particular bit.
Right. And just to complicate it further, the Yoshitoki Oima then inserts another scene and goes back and forth between that scene that I was just reading and the scene with Pokoa and Kahaku. And she's asking, why can't you get rid of that thing in you, the knocker that's inside you?
Right. And he's like, this is a piece of me.
It is. And at the same time, she starts talking to the knocker, not to Kahaku. And it starts talking back and saying, I don't know what will happen when I leave this place. All that I have gained so far may vanish. That is my fear. So this particular knocker is a weird knocker, the one that's been interacting with this bodily form and this will over generations. I think it's transformed the knocker as well as the people that the knocker has been in, right?
Do you think this knocker is the Fushi of the knockers?
Maybe.
Like collecting information and trying to understand humans?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's happening anyway, right? Yeah, and it says we communicate through feelings. Pain equals evil. We've always believed suffering is evil. We knockers cannot tolerate bodies which bring that evil. If anything leads knockers to attack, it must be feelings. So they're responding to suffering. They're responding to pain, right? And then we go back to the beholder saying death is necessary to confirm that. So these are two separate scenes, but I feel like they're talking almost to each other, these two scenes. Very interesting part of the...
Very interesting. And again, I don't know what to do with it.
And then Messer decides...
Oh, yeah, and then he tries to kill him.
He tries to kill him, right? And he just like casually, folds up his
funny.
sword. Yeah.
You've got this immortal being. You acknowledge that he's immortal, and then you're just like, let me give you a little stabby stab. See how it goes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it doesn't go too well.
No.
And then you have, okay, this is Pacoa, right? This is her. And she's
Yeah.
giving the speech and not a single lisp during the speech. And there's plenty of S's. I looked. So it's like she's speaking without a lisp when she's giving the speech to rile up the troops, you know. And that's another character who just kind of randomly appears and then suddenly does stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, she's been hiding throughout all this time, like trying to be in the background, making a point to be extremely in the background.
Sometimes in a
So it is a
barrel.
pretty cool
Yeah.
scene to have her stand up in front of people and then speak and no longer have that lisp to be able to I don't know. It is interesting.
Yeah. And then finally, we're almost done. The arrival of the enemy, and Fushi's ready, I guess. He's put
With March.
with little life forms of little bodies ready that he can just pop into when he needs to. But little March gets separated here and falls down. And that little body that was an empty husk that Fushi was going to use suddenly opens her little eyes. I mean, that was kind of a cool ending for this.
Very cool ending. So we already knew that Fushi is able to bring people back to life. So did he just bring March back to life?
Well, he
Unbeknownst to
doesn't know it.
himself?
So he doesn't know it yet, right?
Right.
The way I'm reading this is so these life forms that have been part of him, he has preserved their bodies essentially. He's made a little March. And when it gets separated from him, because the little rope snaps, that
Right.
leaves an empty body, which now March's spirit, her Phi or whatever, must have been hanging around because there somehow or other, these people that he's gathered to him are anchored to him. They're all
Yes.
around him.
Yes.
And so when little March, the spirit, figured out, oh, I have a body I can enter now. That's me. Just went, boom, there I am, you know. And
Which
so
I think that's what, I mean, we can deduce that that's what resurrection looks like for Fushi.
yeah,
Because remember that woman that was dying in bed and Bon observed her spirit and he knew she died because he saw her spirit appear outside of the bed.
yeah,
And then Fushi created that body and detached himself from it.
yes,
And then the spirit disappeared. And Bon thought that that was her spirit leaving. But in fact, the spirit was going into that body.
yeah,
So that's the way I took it
yeah,
this March just got resurrected.
yep,
It's just that Fushi didn't know what he was doing. Her spirit
correct,
entered that body.
correct. So this is going to have massive implications because when people figure out, Bond has been keeping this a secret for a good reason, because when people figure out, oh, he can bring back the dead, that's not going to be good, right?
Mm.
That is not a good thing in my book.
Well, especially because he's so limited. He can't just like walk up to a grave and just start grave robbing. It's going to be.
It has to be people he knew when they were alive, I think, so far.
Yes.
Anyway.
He has to have known them. That's what we observed with the king, who he couldn't resurrect.
Or the priest or whatever. Yeah.
Priest. Yeah. Whoever it was.
Yeah. So, but even then, that's a long list of people, you know, that he could potentially bring back.
Yeah. He's been interacting with this whole city.
Is that a good thing in your own life?
No, immortality would not be a good thing.
Right. So if you and I had the ability to bring back our loved ones who passed away, we would say no. As painful as that is, we would.
Cemetery taught me to say no.
This never goes well in any story, right? I'm still wondering what's going on with that princess who was revived. Like, there's no consequence for that.
Good?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it is an interesting question because I think the correct answer is no, right? Like you asked the question, if we could revive any of our family members, the correct answer is no, right? I know the correct answer, so I'll answer correctly. But is it the truthful answer? No, not really.
Ooh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah,
we can say,
which is why I don't have that power. Praise the Lord.
yeah, it's probably a good thing that we don't have that power. Yeah. Okay, well, see, now that's good storytelling, I think, that makes you think about these kinds of questions. So I like that, even though I'm constantly scratching my head about the characters and why they're suddenly behaving spastically. But I like the inclusion of these questions. So that's why I'm still invested in the series. How about you?
Oh, I'm still invested. Yeah, I'm very interested to see what comes of the next 2 volumes.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, we shall see. I mean, that's my favorite ending so far. To have March's eye just going pop, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It definitely was like, oh, okay. I want to read the next volumes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good thing, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Murphy. You helped me a lot. Great call on Pioran coming back as the horse. I love that one.
I mean, I don't even know if it's true.
Oh, I'm taking it as absolute gospel at this point. So
No, it's good though, because we both pick up on stuff that the other doesn't see. So that helps us to actually completely, or not completely, but more wholly grasp the series,
stumble through it somehow or other.
stumble through it.
Yeah. Like life, I guess. Yeah. So,
Yeah, there you go.
well, thank you for helping me stumble through. And I appreciate
Thank you.
that's what friends do. And thank you everybody for hanging out with us again. Please leave your comments and tell us what we got wrong and what we got right and all that.
No,
And
for real, please do. It'll help.
yeah, yeah, help. And we will see you next time back on Murphy's channel for volumes 11 and 12. Until next
Woo!
time.